The world thought their marriage would last forever. After all, how many Hollywood couples survive nearly 2 decades, raising 2 children and balancing careers that stretch across continents, without the weight of scandals dragging them down? Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban seemed like the exception to the rule. Red carpets, hand-in-hand appearances, emotional award speeches. Everything about them painted the image of a couple deeply in love, unshaken by the brutal winds of fame. But then came September 30th. The date stamped into court filings. The day Nicole Kidman quietly, but decisively, filed for divorce after 19 years of marriage. And that's when the fairy tale shattered. You might ask yourself, how does a love story like this end so suddenly? Was it truly sudden, or have the signs been there all along, hiding in plain sight? These are the questions that millions are now asking. Because when someone like Nicole Kidman, the Oscar-winning actress known not just for her talent, but for her resilience, admits defeat in love, it means something enormous must have broken. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. And here's where it gets even more shocking. Nicole didn't just file the paperwork. She included details that reveal a deep wound. Words like irreconcilable differences might sound like legal jargon, but beneath them lies a world of heartache, betrayal, and a marriage that had already bled out behind closed doors. According to sources, Nicole wanted to fight for this marriage. She wanted to save it. She believed she could. But the filings, paired with whispers from those close to her, suggest Keith Urban had already checked out. Some even suggest he had already moved on. Now, stop for a moment and think. What's worse? Losing someone because you grew apart, or losing someone because they were already gone while you were still holding on? That's the heartbreak Nicole is living. And that's the hook we cannot ignore. Let's rewind for a moment. This wasn't just any couple. Nicole Kidman, the lioness herself, a woman who has fought her way through the harshness of Hollywood, through broken marriages before, through the pain of public scrutiny. And Keith Urban, the golden boy of country music, whose smooth voice and soulful lyrics earned him not just fame, but respect. Together, they were the picture of balance, her Hollywood grace, his down-to-earth charm. They represented what many thought was rare: stability, longevity, a bond untouchable. But now we're left to ask, was that bond ever as untouchable as it appeared? Was the fairy tale carefully curated for cameras, while behind the gates of their home, cracks widened into fault lines? Think back on their appearances. Award shows where Keith would call Nicole his rock. Moments on stage when Nicole gazed up at him with pride. Paparazzi shots of family vacations, playful, sun-soaked afternoons with their daughters Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret. Every image told us one thing. This was love that had survived the test of time. But what if those images were only snapshots of moments, not reflections of the entire picture? The divorce papers list the date of separation as the same day Nicole filed. A striking detail. Symbolic, even. Almost as if to say, enough is enough, and today, it ends. No dragging out, no hesitation. Just a clean, cold, legal line drawn between past and present. And then comes the parenting plan, a detail that no one expected to sting quite as much as it did. Nicole, according to the agreement, will have 306 days of the year with their daughters. Keith will have just 59. That's not just a legal arrangement. It's a message. It tells us who will carry the weight of parenting, who the court, and perhaps Nicole herself, believes is the more stable force for the children. But ask yourself, why such a staggering imbalance? Why would a father who has spoken so lovingly about his daughters, who has written songs inspired by love and family, step back so dramatically? Unless, of course, the distance had already grown wider than any of us could see. Unless the family had already been fractured long before the paperwork hit the court. And yet, amid all the heartbreak and betrayal, there's a strange clause. Neither Nicole nor Keith may speak badly about one another or their family. They are both legally bound to encourage their daughters to love the other parent. On the surface, it's noble, mature, but beneath it, doesn't it feel like an effort to silence the storm? To contain whatever raw emotions might spill into public view? After all, what kind of divorce needs a clause like that unless there's already venom ready to spew? Even more ironic, both Nicole and Keith are now required to attend a parenting seminar within 60 days. Imagine it. 2 global superstars, forced to sit in a classroom setting, learning how to co-parent as though they are ordinary couples navigating custody. For them, it's not about anonymity, it's about accountability. The court making sure they learn how to cooperate, whether they like it or not. So here's the haunting question. If Nicole fought to save the marriage, why didn't Keith fight too? Was his huge announcement, whatever he said behind closed doors, the moment she realized he had already chosen a different path? Sources claim he moved on, emotionally at least, before the divorce filing. And isn't that betrayal in its purest form? To leave someone, not when the papers are signed, but long before, while the other person is still believing, still hoping, still fighting. But here's where it gets more painful. Nicole listed irreconcilable differences as the reason. Legal, yes, but vague. It leaves room for speculation, and speculation is wildfire. Was it betrayal in the form of infidelity? Was it differences in lifestyle, values, or priorities? Or was it simply two people who could no longer bridge the growing gap between them? Audiences watching this unravel are left asking, did Keith Urban walk away from Nicole Kidman, or did Nicole finally walk away from a man who had already left her behind in spirit? And think of the daughters. Sunday Rose, just 17. Faith Margaret, 14. Teenagers, caught at the most fragile stage of life, now watching their parents divide their world into two. The plan says Nicole gets the majority of the days. But how will they feel as they transition from one house to another? From a mother's embrace to a father's distant weekends? These are not just legal arrangements. These are emotional scars waiting to form. And here's something that no one is asking loudly enough. Why now? Why September 30th? Why not months earlier, when the marriage might have been faltering? Why not years earlier, when the cracks first appeared? Was there something specific about that day? Did Keith say something final? Or did Nicole finally uncover something undeniable? Or was this date chosen to align with something far more strategic? Financial filings, career schedules, or even Keith's looming commitments? Timing in Hollywood is rarely coincidence. As fans reel from the shock, the question lingers. How can two people who built 19 years of life together unravel it in one day? How can a couple that seemed so solid end up in court documents that speak more about separation, parenting, and silence than about reconciliation? And most of all, why is it that Nicole's hurt feels so raw, so betrayed, when Keith himself seems already settled into his new reality? Because betrayal is not just about cheating. It's about abandoning someone emotionally while still standing beside them physically. And if that's what Nicole experienced, then this isn't just a divorce. This is a heartbreak written in real time. But here's the chilling part. For all we know, this isn't the end. This is just the beginning. Because while Nicole may have filed, and Keith may have accepted, the stories behind those documents, the whispered truths, the hidden details, may yet come to light. And when they do, everything we think we know about this couple will change forever. Because if the filings revealed custody and silence, what they didn't reveal might hold the darkest truth of all. And that's where we'll go next. They called it a fairy tale. Hollywood's golden couple. The pairing that seemed too perfect to ever fracture. Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban weren't just husband and wife. They were the image of endurance, the embodiment of what fans wanted to believe about love in an industry where romance rarely lasts longer than a movie premiere. But let me ask you this, was it all real? Or was the picture we were fed carefully painted to keep us believing in something that had already begun to unravel years ago? Let's step back. The year was 2005. Nicole Kidman, fresh off the roller coaster of her high-profile divorce from Tom Cruise, was reinventing herself both personally and professionally. She had already achieved global stardom, but her personal life was fragile, bruised. Then came Keith Urban, the charming, soulful country singer whose struggles with addiction were public knowledge, but whose talent was undeniable. When they met, it felt like destiny. Two broken souls finding each other, healing together, rising stronger than ever. At least, that's the story that was sold to us. From the beginning, their romance looked like a script out of Hollywood. Nicole once admitted she knew Keith was the one, almost instantly. Their wedding in 2006 was a global headline event, drenched in romance and symbolism. Fans around the world sighed with relief. Nicole had found her forever. Keith had found redemption. Together, they could weather anything. But let's dig deeper. Even in those early days, the cracks were there. Keith entered rehab just 4 months after their wedding. For months, Imagine starting a marriage and immediately confronting one of the toughest challenges a couple can face. Nicole stood by him, fiercely loyal, proclaiming her commitment. The media spun it as a love story, Nicole saving her husband, Keith fighting his demons for love. But let me ask you, was that loyalty the beginning of a pattern? Nicole carrying the weight, Nicole being the savior, Nicole clinging to hope, while Keith battled shadows she couldn't always touch. As the years rolled on, the couple cultivated an image of intimacy. Red carpet events showed them kissing passionately. Keith publicly praised Nicole in interviews, calling her his anchor, his light. At award shows, he would thank her before anyone else, his voice heavy with sincerity. On the outside, it looked like something rare and precious. But isn't it always the case that what shines brightest in public can hide the deepest darkness in private? Think of the moments we all saw. Nicole sitting in the front row at Keith's concerts, tears glistening as he sang love songs. Keith showing up at Nicole's premieres, holding her hand like it was glued there. Paparazzi catching family strolls in Sydney or Nashville, daughters skipping alongside them, laughter frozen in glossy photographs. It looked perfect, too perfect. And isn't too perfect often the warning sign we all ignore? Here's the irony. While the world adored them, Nicole and Keith were living with the constant pressures of distance and fame. Nicole's career demanded international travel, months on film sets. Keith's music career demanded tours, interviews, endless days away from home. 2 stars, 2 continents, 2 careers. The schedule alone could crack any marriage. But they insisted they made it work. They insisted love conquered all. And we believed it, because we wanted to. But pause for a second. What happens when the thing you believe in becomes the thing that blinds you? Did Nicole convince herself that their bond was unbreakable, even when it was already fraying? Did Keith play into the performance, projecting devotion on stage while detaching behind closed doors? Let's talk about those daughters for a moment. Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret. Their very names carried weight. Sunday Rose, born as a symbol of peace and new beginnings. Faith Margaret, a name steeped in hope. These children weren't just kids. They were the anchors of the marriage. Proof, to the public at least, that Nicole and Keith had not only built love, but had cemented it with family. The irony? The same children who symbolized unity would later become the dividing line in a custody arrangement that exposed just how uneven their home life had become. So why did so many of us miss the signs? Perhaps because the couple was masterful at crafting a narrative. Hollywood thrives on illusions, and Nicole and Keith gave the world the illusion it craved. That true love exists, that fame doesn't always destroy, that second chances are possible. It was comforting. It was inspiring. But was it authentic? Look closer at Keith's music during those years. Lyrics about heartbreak, about distance, about yearning. Songs that seemed tender love letters to Nicole, but could they also have been confessions of struggle, veiled in melody? How many times do artists hide their truths in plain sight, while fans mistake them for poetry? And then there was Nicole, ever the stoic, ever the loyal partner. She once said in interviews that she wanted a marriage where someone looks after me and I look after him. It sounded noble, but doesn't it also sound like imbalance? A woman who gave endlessly, a man who sometimes couldn't give back fully because he was wrestling his own demons? How long can any relationship survive when one partner is constantly holding the line while the other falters? Now here's where the story twists. While fans called them the couple that made it, insiders whispered otherwise. Stories of tension behind the scenes, disagreements about parenting, about time spent apart, about priorities. Nicole craving family closeness. Keith pulled toward the relentless energy of touring. 2 visions of life, colliding again and again. Ask yourself this. Have you ever seen a couple whose public love seemed almost exaggerated? The constant hand-holding, the dramatic kisses for cameras, the endless compliments. Sometimes that's real, but sometimes it's performance. And when you peel back the performance, you find something much less romantic. Could Nicole and Keith's love story have been exactly that? A performance meant to keep the audience clapping even as the actors backstage were at war? What makes this all the more tragic is that Nicole wanted to believe. She wanted to save the marriage. According to sources close to her, she truly believed love could win. But isn't that the cruelest kind of heartbreak? Believing when the other person has already stopped. Fighting when the other has already surrendered. And that's where the betrayal cuts deepest. So yes, they fooled us. Maybe they even fooled themselves. For 19 years, they played the role of Hollywood's eternal couple, convincing us that love conquers all. But behind the smiles, the songs, the applause, and the photographs, the truth was unraveling. And that truth is only beginning to surface now, through court filings, through whispers, through heartbreak that can no longer be hidden behind red carpet glamour. Because as we've seen time and again, fairy tales in Hollywood rarely last. But this fairy tale? This one collapsed in silence, until suddenly, it exploded. And what came next would make even the most loyal fans question everything they thought they knew about Nicole and Keith's marriage. Distance kills slowly. Not with a loud crash, not with a fiery explosion, but with a quiet erosion you don't notice until the walls are gone. And when it comes to Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban, distance wasn't just about miles on a map. It was about time, energy, and priorities that never seemed to align. Here's the question no one wants to ask. How do you build a life together when your lives are lived in opposite directions? Nicole was chasing roles across continents, filming in Europe, Australia, America, wherever scripts demanded. Keith was chasing stadiums and concert halls, city after city, tour after tour, thousands of miles from home. They had the fame, they had the fortune, but did they ever truly have time for each other? Let's break it down. Nicole is one of the most in-demand actresses of her generation. Her work is intense, consuming. A movie role means months away, days that start before dawn and end in exhaustion. Keith's world is no easier. Touring isn't glamorous, it's grueling. Travel, rehearsals, late nights, endless interviews. For years, they lived like this. Two ships passing, waving from across oceans, but rarely docking in the same harbor long enough to breathe. And sure, in interviews, they claimed it worked. Nicole once proudly said they never spent more than 3 weeks apart. It sounded romantic, like a golden rule that kept their bond alive. But ask yourself this, is 3 weeks apart really the victory it sounds like? Think about your own relationships. Could you survive 3 weeks without your partner, over and over again, year after year? 3 weeks becomes a lifetime when it keeps repeating. The irony is, fans thought distance was their strength, that their ability to juggle demanding careers proved their resilience. But maybe the opposite was true. Maybe distance was the very poison seeping into the veins of their marriage. Because time apart doesn't just separate, it creates space. Space for misunderstandings. Space for loneliness. Space for resentment to grow unchecked. And resentment is silent. It doesn't announce itself. It lingers. Nicole may have smiled on red carpets, but behind those smiles, was there bitterness that Keith's career pulled him away too often? Was Keith tired of always being the husband of Nicole Kidman when the spotlight followed her more fiercely than him? Fame may glitter, but its shadow is dark. Now let's talk about priorities. Nicole is a mother before she is anything else. By all accounts, she wanted stability for her daughters. A home, a family that felt grounded despite the chaos of fame. Keith's world was motion, adrenaline, the high of a crowd screaming his name. These aren't just different lifestyles, they're different universes. How do you merge the need for calm with the thirst for chaos? Some friends reportedly admired how different they were, saying their differences balanced them. But differences don't always balance. Sometimes they tear. Nicole's vision of quiet family dinners clashed with Keith's reality of after-parties and concerts. And as years passed, what once seemed exciting may have become unbearable. Imagine the conversations. Nicole calling from a set in Europe, desperate for comfort, only to hear Keith was on stage in New York, unreachable. Keith finishing a concert, riding the high of music, only to call home and find Nicole exhausted, distracted, half asleep. Little by little, connection fades. It doesn't take betrayal to destroy a marriage. Sometimes, absence is betrayal enough. And let's not forget, Keith's demons never fully disappeared. His struggles with addiction were a shadow over their marriage from the start. Nicole stood by him, yes. She supported him through rehab, through relapses. But doesn't support eventually feel like sacrifice? Doesn't love start to feel like survival when one partner is always holding the other up? Nicole's loyalty was unwavering, but loyalty doesn't erase exhaustion. The cruel irony? To the outside world, they appeared closer than ever. Every award show was another performance. They kissed, they clutched hands, they whispered in each other's ears. Fans swooned, calling them the real thing. But could those public displays have been rehearsed? Not rehearsed for cameras, but for survival? A way to convince themselves and each other that everything was fine? Ask yourself this. Why do couples overcompensate in public? Why do they insist on showing affection so dramatically? Is it love, or is it camouflage? And then comes the most damning question of all. When Keith finally made his huge announcement about their marriage, was it really sudden? Or was it simply the moment he said aloud what distance had already carved into stone? That the marriage wasn't working, that their lives had grown too far apart, that the performance couldn't hold any longer. Nicole, according to those close to her, felt blindsided. She thought she could save them. She thought love was enough. But maybe Keith had already decided long before that moment. Maybe distance didn't just erode their marriage. It ended it long before the papers were filed. Because here's the truth. No matter how much love you start with, no matter how many promises you make, distance is relentless. It chips, it gnaws, it hollows. And once the hollow space becomes too wide, there's no way to rebuild. The fairy tale didn't crumble overnight. It withered slowly, across airports, across time zones, across lonely nights when Nicole was on a set and Keith was on a stage. By the time the announcement came, the fairy tale was already gone. But what did Keith actually say? What was the bombshell that tore Nicole's hope apart in an instant? That, my friends, is where the story turns explosive. It wasn't a whisper. It wasn't a quiet sigh behind closed doors. When Keith Urban finally spoke, it hit like a thunderclap. A declaration, raw and undeniable, that made Nicole's world tilt on its axis. For years, she had been holding on, stitching the cracks, believing they could weather the storm. But then came Keith's huge announcement. And in that moment, Nicole realized this wasn't a storm she could calm. It was an ending. But what exactly did Keith say? And why did it slice so deep that Nicole, the woman who fought to preserve her family, walked straight into court with divorce papers the very same day? Some claim it was blunt, that Keith told her he couldn't live the life they'd built anymore, that the demands of their marriage were suffocating him. Others suggest it was colder, that he had already emotionally moved on, hinting that there might be someone else who had his attention. Sources close to Nicole insist she felt blindsided, betrayed. She thought she could save him. But Keith's words, his huge announcement, told her he didn't want saving anymore. Let's pause here and ask. Have you ever been in a situation where you were fighting for someone, but you suddenly realized they weren't fighting with you? They were fighting against you? That's betrayal at its sharpest edge. And that's the edge Nicole found herself cut on. The irony is painful. Keith's entire career is built on love songs. Ballads of longing, of heartbreak, of devotion. Millions of fans believed every lyric. They believed he lived them with Nicole. They believed their love was the muse behind his greatest hits. But what if those songs weren't love letters? What if they were confessions of emptiness, coded messages hidden in melody? Let's not forget, in Hollywood, words are power. Public words even more so. And Keith's announcement didn't just ripple through Nicole's heart. It echoed across the entertainment world. Fans were stunned. Social media buzzed. How could the man who once called Nicole my everything suddenly signal that everything was over? Think of it this way. Keith's announcement was the verbal equivalent of pulling the plug. Nicole had been trying to keep the machine alive, rearranging the wires, sparking the hope. But in one sentence, Keith cut the power. There was no saving it anymore. But here's the twist. Did Keith intend for the announcement to be so final? Or was it just brutal honesty, a crack in the mask that had been holding for too long? Maybe he didn't expect Nicole to file so quickly. Maybe he thought they'd have one more fight, one more desperate round of repair. Instead, Nicole stood up, gathered what dignity she had left, and said, "If you're out, then I'm done too." Let's rewind for just a moment. Think about the pressure they were under. For 19 years, their image wasn't just personal, it was public property. Every magazine cover, every red carpet kiss, every concert dedication. People clung to them as proof that love in Hollywood could last. But do you know what that kind of pressure does? It makes every fight bigger, every disappointment heavier, every crack harder to hide. So when Keith finally announced the truth, that the marriage was over in his heart, it wasn't just Nicole he let down. It was millions. Now picture Nicole in that moment. She's been called strong her entire career, resilient beyond belief. But strength doesn't make betrayal hurt less. If anything, it makes it worse. Because strong people keep giving chances. Strong people hold on longer than they should. And when they're finally broken, the fall is devastating. Do you think Nicole replayed his words in her head as she signed those court papers? Do you think she wondered how long he had been feeling that way? How many times she smiled beside him in public while he was already gone inside? That's the cruelty of Keith's huge announcement. It wasn't just about the end of their marriage. It was about the revelation that the end had already begun long before she knew it. And here's where it becomes almost unbearable. Nicole's filing didn't just signal a breakup. It was a reaction, a response to Keith's words. In the legal language of irreconcilable differences, what you really hear is, he announced it, and she accepted it. But there's another angle. Some insiders believe Keith's announcement wasn't cruel, it was necessary. That after years of holding it together for appearances, he finally had to speak the truth. That honesty, even brutal honesty, was better than the charade. If that's true, then maybe Keith wasn't trying to hurt Nicole. Maybe he was trying to set them both free. Still, freedom comes with a cost. And the cost here is staggering. 2 daughters torn between parents. A marriage's legacy rewritten in court documents. And a love story once called Forever, reduced to 59 days a year of fatherhood and 306 days of motherhood. So here's the haunting question. Was Keith's huge announcement an act of betrayal, or was it an act of courage? Was he abandoning Nicole, or was he finally being honest about a marriage that had already died? We may never know the exact words. We may never know the exact tone. But we know the effect. One announcement, and Nicole Kidman's 19-year marriage crumbled in a single day. And yet, as shocking as his words were, Nicole's reaction made even bigger waves. Because she didn't sit in silence. She didn't wait for the storm to pass. She went straight to the courthouse and filed for divorce, ending nearly 2 decades in one stroke of a pen. But what did those papers actually reveal? What did Nicole lay out, line by line, that turned whispers of heartbreak into cold, legal reality? That's where this story takes its sharpest turn. It landed like an ice storm. No drawn-out leaks, no speculation-driven trickle to the press. Just a filing, cold and clear, stamped with a date that ended 19 years of marriage. Nicole Kidman didn't waste time with ambiguity. On September 30th, she made her move official. And with that, the carefully curated image of Hollywood's forever couple collapsed into a stack of court documents. Let's sit with that for a moment. Divorce papers. Not a tabloid rumor. Not an overheard argument. Not some anonymous source whispering to entertainment blogs. This was Nicole herself, signing her name, stating on the record that the marriage was over. That after nearly 2 decades, her love story with Keith Urban was irreparably broken. But why so sudden? Why so final? The filings give us clues. First, the separation date. Nicole didn't say they'd been apart for months or years. She wrote that the separation began the same day she filed. Do you realize how loaded that is? It's not just a timeline, it's a statement. It tells us she wasn't willing to let the marriage linger in limbo. No quiet, trial separation. No months of figuring it out. For Nicole, that day was both the end of her marriage and the beginning of her independence. And then comes the official reason, irreconcilable differences. 2 words that appear in countless divorce cases, but always hide oceans beneath them. Think about it. If Nicole wanted to save the marriage, as insiders insist she did, then why surrender to irreconcilable? Why admit defeat in such stark terms? Unless Keith's announcement, his words, cut so deeply that reconciliation wasn't even on the table anymore. Unless she realized that what she wanted to save no longer existed. But the most shocking details come in the custody agreement. Nicole gets 306 days a year with their daughters. Keith gets just 59. That's not balance. That's not, we'll figure it out together. That's a declaration of who the primary parent has always been. It tells us that while Keith was on stage, Nicole was the one at home. While he toured the world, Nicole held the world of their daughters together. The numbers don't just divide days. They tell a story of absence, of who carried the daily weight of parenting and who didn't. And think about those girls, Sunday Rose, 17, and Faith Margaret, 14. Teenagers at an age when stability is everything. Their lives will now be split, structured down to the day. Imagine being told you'll spend 306 days with one parent 59 with another. It's not just math, it's a judgment. A decision about whose presence provides more security. And whether Nicole intended it or not, the numbers cast Keith as the parent who wasn't there enough. But here's a detail many overlook. Neither parent will pay child support. On paper, it looks civil, even fair. They are both wealthy. Neither needs financial help. But doesn't it also feel cold? Almost transactional? Like dividing assets, dividing days, dividing lives, without emotion. Just clean cuts on paper. It's practical, yes. But practical doesn't erase the pain behind it. Now consider the clause that neither Nicole nor Keith can speak badly about each other or their families. Do you see the irony? A couple who once professed endless love now needs a legal order to prevent venom. What does that tell you? That the risk of things turning ugly is very real. That whatever Keith said in his announcement, whatever Nicole felt in her response, left wounds raw enough that lawyers felt compelled to stitch silence into the agreement. And then there's the parenting seminar requirement. Think of the humiliation. Nicole Kidman, an Academy Award-winning actress. Keith Urban, a Grammy-winning musician. Two of the most recognized faces in the world. And now they're legally mandated to sit in a seminar designed to teach ordinary divorcing parents how to co-parent civilly. Strip away the glamour, the wealth, the fame, and what do you see? Two broken people, being told by the law how to behave for the sake of their children. It's sobering, it's human, and it's tragic. Let's not forget the emotional weight behind the legal jargon. According to sources, Nicole felt hurt, betrayed. She believed she could save their marriage. But the moment Keith made his announcement, she realized he had already moved on. Imagine the devastation of standing by someone through rehab, through public struggles, through the grind of fame, only to learn they'd emotionally checked out long before you stopped fighting. And here's where the papers say what Nicole couldn't. By filing so quickly, by citing irreconcilable differences, by outlining custody so starkly, she spoke a truth she couldn't, or wouldn't, speak aloud. The marriage was not just over. It had been broken for longer than anyone knew. But pause for a second and think. Was the filing about heartbreak, or was it about power? Nicole is not a woman who lets life dictate her fate. Filing on September 30th, drawing a legal line, might have been her way of reclaiming control. If Keith's words took the ground from beneath her, then the papers put her back on solid footing. It wasn't just about ending the marriage. It was about ending it on her terms. And yet, even in that control, there's a chilling question. Did Nicole file to protect herself or to protect her daughters? Maybe both. Because court documents don't lie. They don't exaggerate. They don't glamorize. They just tell the story in black and white. And the story Nicole told was that her marriage to Keith Urban could not be fixed. But here's the part that makes this story ache. Legal papers don't capture love. They don't show the years of laughter, the whispers in the dark, the pride of watching children grow. They don't show the hope Nicole clung to, or the music Keith poured his soul into. They strip away humanity, leaving only dates, clauses, and signatures. And in those cold details, the warmth of their life together vanished. So ask yourself this. When you read a divorce filing, do you see paperwork, or do you see ghosts? The ghosts of what once was. The ghosts of promises made in front of God, family, and the world. The ghosts of a couple who once vowed forever but couldn't find a way to keep it. Nicole's divorce filing wasn't just the end of her marriage. It was the moment she chose finality over illusion. The moment she stopped hoping and started surviving. The moment she admitted to the world, and maybe to herself, that the man she loved had already left her long before the ink dried on her papers. But if the filing revealed her pain, the next section reveals something even more shocking. How she fought for her children with a plan that left no doubt about who she believed was the true anchor of their lives. And that's where this story takes an even sharper turn. It's always the children who carry the quietest weight in a divorce. And in Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban's case, the custody arrangement is not just a legal formality, it's a revelation. It tells us more about their marriage than any red carpet kiss or carefully crafted interview ever could. When the filings became public, jaws dropped. Nicole will have custody of Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret for 306 days of the year. Keith Urban, just 59. That's not balance. That's not compromise. That's not 50-50. It's a gulf so wide it practically screams about what was happening behind closed doors. Ask yourself this. In a world where celebrity divorces often showcase equal co-parenting to preserve image, why would the split between Nicole and Keith look so uneven? Why such a dramatic tilt toward Nicole? The answer lies in the life they lived before the paperwork. Nicole has always been the anchor of her children's world. When Keith was on stage, Nicole was the one tucking the girls into bed. When he was halfway across the globe on tour, she was showing up at school events, quietly blending into the role of mom despite being one of the most famous women alive. The custody schedule doesn't just divide days. It confirms who carried the daily load. And here's the sting. By agreeing to it, Keith effectively admits that reality. He isn't fighting for more days. He isn't demanding equal custody. He's conceding. And concessions like that tell you something important. Either he knows he can't match Nicole's stability, or he doesn't want to. Which one do you think it is? Let's think about those numbers again. 306 days. That's almost the entire year. Keith's 59 days. That's not even 2 months. Break it down further. 2 months out of 12. Imagine being a father whose daughters see you only during holidays or select breaks. Imagine the emptiness of those days in between. Or worse, imagine being the child who wonders why dad is mostly absent. But here's where the irony deepens. The agreement says both Nicole and Keith must encourage each child to continue to love the other parent and be comfortable in both families. On the surface, it sounds noble, protective. But dig deeper. Why does such a clause need to exist? Because without it, the danger of one parent poisoning the children against the other looms large. And if such a clause is necessary, doesn't it tell us just how bitter the undercurrent of this divorce might be? Now, think about Nicole's daughters. Sunday Rose, 17, on the cusp of adulthood. Faith Margaret, 14, stepping into her teenage years. 2 girls who grew up believing their parents were the example of true love. Suddenly, that image is shattered. Teenagers don't read court filings, but they feel the fallout. They sense the tension in silences, the absences that speak louder than words. These girls will grow up knowing their father sees them a fraction of the year. That number, 59 days, will linger in their minds, whether anyone says it aloud or not. And here's the contradiction. Keith Urban has spoken for years about his love for his family. He's written songs inspired by them. He's dedicated performances to them. Fans believed he was the picture of a doting husband and father. Yet, when it came time to formalize his role, why did he step back so dramatically? Was it guilt? Was it acceptance that Nicole had been the stronger parental figure all along? Or was it something darker? Was Keith ready to start a life elsewhere, without the responsibility of daily fatherhood weighing him down? Nicole's role, by contrast, is crystal clear. The filings show her as the constant, the provider of stability. She didn't just fight for custody. She defined it so completely that there is no doubt about where the girls will spend their lives. 306 days isn't just a number. It's a claim. It's Nicole saying, "I've always been their world, and I will continue to be." But the custody plan has another layer. Nicole and Keith will make major decisions regarding their girls together. Joint decision-making, but not joint living. Doesn't that strike you as contradictory? On paper, it looks like partnership. In practice, it's going to be conflict. 2 parents who couldn't reconcile their own marriage are now legally bound to reconcile decisions about education, health, future, all while living apart, all while simmering in unresolved pain. How long before that turns explosive? And then there's the silence. The legal agreement forbids them from speaking badly of one another. But silence doesn't erase emotion. What happens the first time Sunday asks, "Why don't I see Dad more?" What does Nicole say? What does Keith say? The words they can't use will echo louder than the ones they're allowed to speak. Now imagine Keith in those 59 days. Do you think he'll be the doting father, trying to cram a year's worth of love into weeks? Or will resentment creep in, knowing his daughters spend nearly the entire year with Nicole? Will he use those days to heal his relationship with them? Or will they become awkward, fractured visits, reminders of a family that no longer exists as it once did? And think of Nicole. Every day, every night, she will be the one. She'll guide, she'll protect, she'll shoulder the responsibility. But what happens when the girls themselves start questioning the imbalance? When they look at their father and wonder why he wasn't around enough? Nicole may shield them from bitterness, but the math is undeniable. 306 verses 59. Children understand fairness long before they understand law. This custody twist isn't just a detail in a filing. It's a crack in the facade of what their marriage really was. It's proof that Nicole was the glue, the constant, the anchor, while Keith drifted further and further away. And it leaves us with a haunting thought. Maybe Nicole wasn't just betrayed as a wife. Maybe she was abandoned as a co-parent long before the papers ever reflected it. But if custody told us who carried the family, the next revelation told us something even darker, that Nicole's pain wasn't just about separation. It was about betrayal. A betrayal so deep that friends say she never saw it coming, until it was too late. And that's where the story takes its most dramatic turn yet. Betrayal doesn't always come with lipstick on a collar or a paparazzi photo of a secret rendezvous. Sometimes it comes in silence, in coldness, in the empty space where love once lived. And according to those closest to Nicole Kidman, that's exactly what she felt in the final years of her marriage to Keith Urban. Not just distance, not just disagreements. Betrayal. Sources say Nicole believed, with all her heart, that she could save their marriage. She held on through Keith's demons, through his rehab, through his career-driven absences. She carried the weight of their daughter's world, even when it meant sacrificing her own needs. But here's the sting. While she was fighting for them, Keith had already stopped fighting. He had already checked out. Some even whisper that he had already moved on, long before Nicole filed those papers. So let's ask the hard question. What is betrayal, really? Is it an affair? A secret? Or is it something more subtle, more devastating? Betrayal can simply be the moment you realize your partner stopped choosing you long before you stopped choosing them. Nicole's friends describe her as blindsided. She wanted counseling, compromise, reconciliation. She wanted to believe that after nearly 2 decades, love was enough. But the problem with betrayal is that it doesn't care about history. It doesn't care about vows or children or the years you've invested. When someone's heart leaves the room, the relationship is already over. And maybe Keith's heart had been gone for years. Look back at their public appearances. The smiles, the hand-holding, the passionate kisses at award shows. Fans called it genuine. But wasn't it also excessive? Almost like a performance? Some body language experts even pointed out how Nicole often leaned toward Keith while he leaned away. Subtle signs, ignored by most, but glaring to those who knew the truth. What if those red carpet moments weren't proof of love, but proof of desperation? Nicole clinging, Keith enduring. And then there's Keith's music. Heartfelt ballads, filled with longing, distance, and loss. At the time, fans assumed they were about the sacrifices of fame, about the bittersweet ache of being apart from the woman he loved. But what if they were confessions? What if those lyrics were his way of telling the world he felt detached, isolated, maybe even trapped? Imagine Nicole, sitting in the audience, believing the words were love songs for her, when in reality, they might have been goodbyes hidden in melody. Here's where it gets cruel. Nicole has already endured betrayal once. Her marriage to Tom Cruise ended in heartbreak, her loyalty repaid with secrecy and sudden collapse. And now, years later, she found herself in a painfully familiar place, trusting a man who, in her eyes, didn't trust her enough to stay. That pattern, that cycle of love and abandonment, must have cut her deeper than any headline can capture. But betrayal doesn't just wound the spouse, it infects the family. Imagine the daughters, watching their mother cry behind closed doors. Teenagers are perceptive. They know when something is wrong, even if no one says it aloud. Sunday and Faith may not know the full details, but they feel the tension, the coldness in the house, the distance in their father's voice. And isn't that its own kind of betrayal? Not just of Nicole, but of them too. Now let's talk about the whispers. Rumors swirl around every Hollywood breakup, and Nicole and Keith's divorce is no exception. Some insiders suggest Keith had grown close to people outside the marriage. Nothing confirmed, nothing proven, but even the hint of emotional betrayal can feel like daggers. Others point to his lifestyle, the constant touring, the late nights, the world Nicole didn't share. Was betrayal really about another woman? Or was it about the life he chose that left no room for her? Nicole's pain, according to friends, wasn't just sadness. It was humiliation. She believed in the story. She believed they were different. She believed that despite the temptations, the fame, the distance, Keith Urban was her partner for life. And then came the announcement. And then came the papers. And suddenly, the woman who believed she could save it all realized she had been saving it alone. And betrayal has a cruel way of rewriting memory. Think about it. When you learn you've been betrayed, don't you start to look back at every smile, every kiss, every word, and wonder which ones were real? Nicole must now look back on nearly 2 decades of her life and ask, how long has he been gone? How long have I been holding up a marriage that only existed in my heart? This is where betrayal cuts deeper than divorce. Divorce is an ending. Betrayal is a revelation. It's the sudden knowledge that the ending began long before you noticed. And here's the irony. Even in betrayal, Nicole tried to keep dignity. She agreed, in the filing, not to speak badly of Keith or his family. She agreed to encourage her daughters to love him. That is loyalty, even in the face of disloyalty. That is grace, even in heartbreak. But doesn't that grace also highlight the betrayal even more? That she could still protect him while he had already stopped protecting her? So ask yourself, what's worse? Being betrayed by an act, or being betrayed by indifference? Which would hurt more? To discover a secret fling, or to realize your partner quietly stopped loving you years ago? For Nicole, it seems the betrayal wasn't a scandalous headline. It was the silence, the emotional vacancy, the coldness that crept in where warmth once lived. And if betrayal was what broke Nicole's heart, then what followed was the ripple effect. Friends torn, family divided, Hollywood buzzing. Because once betrayal becomes public, the whispers become deafening. Everyone wants to know the truth. Everyone wants to pick sides. And that's exactly what happened. Because just as Nicole was grappling with the pain of betrayal, the world around her was reacting, and those reactions only made the wounds deeper. Hollywood feeds on spectacle, but when a marriage like Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban's implodes, the reactions go far beyond gossip. They cut into friendships, family alliances, and the very fabric of an industry that thrives on appearances. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone takes a side, even if they won't admit it out loud. And the fallout from Nicole and Keith's split has sent shockwaves through their inner circle and across the entertainment world. The first ripple was, of course, among their closest friends. For years, Nicole and Keith were the couple everyone admired. They hosted dinner parties, turned up at industry events arm in arm, and projected the kind of balance others envied. But when the divorce news broke, some friends confessed they weren't entirely surprised. They'd seen the tension. They'd witnessed the cracks behind the glittering facade. The public may have been fooled, but insiders weren't. Think about it. In Hollywood, marriages are social currency. Couples attend galas, fundraisers, premieres together. Appearances matter. A united front can boost careers, maintain brand images, even open doors. Nicole and Keith were a power couple in that sense, a duo that amplified each other's presence. Their separation doesn't just mean heartbreak. It means a shift in social dynamics. Suddenly, friends are forced to choose. Whose dinner table do they sit at now? Who gets the loyalty when invitations are sent? Family, too, is caught in the storm. Nicole is fiercely protective of her daughters. Her sister Antonia has always been a pillar of support, and sources say she immediately rallied around Nicole, vowing to shield the girls from media chaos. But what about Keith's side? His family in Australia adored Nicole. They saw her as the woman who stood by Keith during his darkest battles. Divorce doesn't erase those bonds overnight. Yet, as loyalty splits, quiet resentments grow. Now, let's step into Hollywood's broader reaction. To many, this divorce feels like betrayal of belief. Nicole and Keith weren't just a couple. They were proof that love could survive fame. Their relationship was often cited in interviews, in magazines, as an example of stability in an unstable industry. So when news of the split surfaced, the collective gasp was almost audible. Other celebrities have reacted in coded ways. Some have posted cryptic Instagram stories about heartbreak and resilience. Others have quietly unfollowed Keith, while doubling down on public support for Nicole. Hollywood doesn't always declare its loyalties outright, but it shows them in who it chooses to stand beside. And right now, it seems the tide leans toward Nicole. But not everyone is sympathetic. Whispers suggest some see Nicole as controlling, as the partner who demanded too much. They point to Keith's grueling schedule, his need for freedom, and argue that Nicole's vision of family life may have been too rigid. Do you see how betrayal bleeds into blame? Even among friends, narratives diverge. Some say Keith abandoned Nicole. Others insist Nicole never truly understood Keith's restless spirit. Then there's the media circus. Headlines screamed shocking divorce, betrayal behind closed doors, custody bombshell. Late-night hosts made jokes. Tabloids speculated about mistresses, addictions, secrets. For Nicole, every headline was another knife. For Keith, every rumor was another scar. And for their daughters? Every magazine cover at the grocery store became a reminder that their parents' heartbreak was public property. Hollywood thrives on irony, and here's the cruelest one. Nicole and Keith built careers on storytelling. She brought characters to life on screen. He poured emotions into songs. Together, they told the world a story of unbreakable love. Now, that story has collapsed, and everyone is rewriting it in their own version. But friends are not just observers, they're participants. Some have reportedly urged Nicole to keep silent, to let dignity be her weapon. Others encourage her to tell her side, to control the narrative before rumors cement themselves as truth. And Keith? Some of his inner circle are said to be pushing him toward music as therapy, urging him to channel the collapse into his art. Which side do you think will speak first? And when they do, whose story will the world believe? And here's where it gets messy. Divorce doesn't just divide a couple, it divides a community. Co-stars, collaborators, producers, everyone who once treated Nicole and Keith as a package now has to recalibrate. Invitations will be split, partnerships strained. In a town where perception is everything, no one wants to be caught choosing wrong. But let's not forget the fans. They feel betrayed too. Thousands flocked to social media to mourn the end of a love story they believed in. Some sided with Nicole, flooding her posts with messages of support. Others defended Keith, insisting that marriage is complicated and that we don't know the full story. Fans aren't just spectators. They're invested stakeholders in the fairy tales Hollywood sells. And when those fairy tales collapse, fans grieve like family. The reactions are not just about sympathy or blame. They're about identity. Nicole, the lioness, is now painted as the betrayed, resilient mother. Keith, the country boy turned superstar, is seen by some as the wanderer, the man who couldn't stay tethered. These roles will follow them for years. And the longer they stay silent, the more the public will write the story for them. And yet, for all the noise, one thing remains clear. The people closest to Nicole and Keith aren't just reacting, they're preparing. Preparing for the battles still to come. Custody may be outlined, silence may be ordered, but emotions like betrayal and resentment don't vanish on cue. Friends and family know the story isn't finished. The legal filing was just Act 1. Because as Hollywood reacts, as family circles tighten, as loyalties shift, another bombshell was buried in the settlement. Something that shocked even seasoned divorce watchers. And that's where we turn next. The surprising decision that neither Nicole nor Keith will pay child support. It's one of the strangest twists in this already dramatic split. You'd expect in a divorce between two celebrities worth millions, even hundreds of millions, that money would play a central role. Custody battles, spousal support demands, child support wrangling. Those are usually the headlines. But Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban's filings revealed something that stunned even the most cynical Hollywood insiders. Neither party will pay child support. Let that sink in. No child support. None. Not a dollar. For two daughters still in their teenage years. How does that happen in a divorce of this scale? How do two people with enormous resources, with vastly different parenting schedules, Nicole with 306 days, Keith with just 59, agree to walk away from financial obligations toward their children? On the surface, it looks civil, practical even. Nicole is wealthy in her own right. Keith, too, has amassed millions from his career. Both can easily provide for Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret without dipping into the other's bank account. But if you peel back the surface, the decision feels cold, almost calculated, doesn't it? Ask yourself, is this really about fairness, or is it about control? By refusing child support, Nicole may be signaling that she doesn't want or need Keith's money to raise their daughters. She doesn't want him to have financial leverage, any excuse to say, "I help support you." Instead, she's planting a flag. I've got this. I don't need you. From Keith's perspective, agreeing to no child support also raises questions. Was it relief? A way to simplify things, cut ties, reduce obligations beyond the bare minimum of his 59 parenting days? Or was it strategy, an attempt to avoid financial scrutiny, to keep the split clean without months of drawn-out negotiations about money? It's almost symbolic. For years, money in Hollywood marriages represents entanglement. When one spouse pays the other, ties remain. With no support exchanged, the ties are severed. Nicole and Keith's choice suggests this divorce isn't just about separating lives. It's about erasing dependencies. But what about the girls? This decision isn't about whether they'll have food on the table. They'll want for nothing. But isn't child support also about acknowledgement? About one parent saying, I have a financial responsibility to you, no matter what. By waiving it, what message is being sent? That Keith's 59 days a year are enough? That money doesn't need to represent commitment? Or that love, and love alone, should? Here's the contradiction. Nicole and Keith have pledged to make major decisions about their daughters together. Education, health, future plans, big choices that require unity. But unity without financial cooperation is fragile. What happens when one daughter wants to attend a private university or pursue a passion that requires funding? Who pays? Does Nicole shoulder the majority because she has the girls the majority of the time? Or will Keith step in voluntarily, case by case? Without a legal framework, everything is left to trust. And trust, clearly, has already shattered. This no-child support arrangement also opens the door to speculation. Was this decision a reflection of respect or bitterness? Maybe Nicole refused Keith's money as a matter of pride. Maybe Keith offered, but Nicole turned it down, unwilling to be tied to him any further. Or maybe, just maybe, the decision was made to minimize conflict, to keep details of their finances out of the courtroom, away from the public eye. For two people who built their lives in the spotlight, privacy in divorce can be a rare kind of power. But let's not sugarcoat it. No matter how you spin it, this decision feels strange, odd, inconsistent with the imbalance of custody. Because usually, the parent with fewer days pays support to the parent who bears the bulk of responsibility. Nicole takes the brunt of the parenting. Why would she also take on the brunt of the cost? Unless, of course, this was never about fairness. Unless this was about independence. Nicole may have been sending Keith a message with those papers. I don't need your help. I don't need your support. I don't even need your money to raise the children we share. I've carried this family for years, and I'll keep carrying it, without you. And that's where the pain cuts deeper. Because child support isn't just numbers. It's symbolic. It says, even though we aren't together, I am still bound to this family. Without it, Keith's role feels reduced to those 59 days. Almost like a visitor. A guest in his daughter's lives, rather than a permanent fixture. Now here's where irony strikes again. Keith Urban, the man who wrote love songs about family, about devotion, is now in a position where the courts see his fatherhood as a part-time role, one that doesn't even require financial contribution. Doesn't that sting? Doesn't that contradict everything he's projected through his music, his interviews, his image as the doting dad? Fans are asking the question out loud. How could a father who claimed his family was his greatest treasure accept such a reduced role, legally and financially? Was this his choice, or Nicole's line in the sand? One thing is certain. The no-child support clause has reshaped the narrative. This isn't just a divorce. It's a statement. Nicole's independence, Keith's distance, the daughter's fractured world, all lay bare in a financial decision that says more than any press release ever could. But as cold as money can be, there's something even colder waiting in those documents. Something that reveals just how toxic this split could become if left unchecked. Because if money wasn't the battlefield, words were. And that's where the story takes us next. The clause that forbids Nicole and Keith from speaking badly about each other, and what that silence really means.